Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We'd like to welcome you back to the Mesa City Council study sessions. We're back up again after a little break for a few weeks during the summer. So welcome everyone to the Thursday, August 15th Mesa City Council study session. I will note that all of our council is present. The first item on our agenda for this meeting is to review our agenda for this coming Monday's meeting. I know we have we have one staff presentation on item 5B, so we'll get to that. But I think before that, council members have some questions on some of the other agenda items. Mr. Reddy, I know you had a question.
Yeah, on 4M on the cooperative contract for asbestos, lead, and mold abatement. Just curious on, I know this is particularly on city facilities. I think there's some on abandoned residential structures, but wondering how big of a problem we still have on lead and asbestos and mold throughout our city. Is there questions from the residents that ask for support or help in the past? I know there's been efforts throughout the country, particularly in the East Coast, to remove a lot of lead piping and those kinds of things. So we're just wondering how we're going about helping residents to maybe support them in the future. I know there's funding out there for some of these things, so just curious.
So, good morning, Mayor, Council. With this contract is typically just for city facilities. The only time we'll get involved with a private residence is typically if it's through code and there's something that needs to be done immediately and there's not a property owner that's available or willing to do that work. That's typically when we'll get involved. It might be a fire of an abandoned building or something along those lines. As far as asbestos and lead-based paint, the city of Mesa, because it is relatively new, you talked about the East Coast, we don't typically have as much lead-based paint issues, but the environmental group doesn't really get involved on the residential side. And then on the lead pipes, that's going to be Water Resources that is involved in that, but in similar, it being a newer city, it's not as much of an issue here as what it is on the East Coast.
So Vice Mayor, I know there are typically, in other communities I've worked in, there are programs, just like you said, to identify neighborhoods that may have the lead-based paint, especially if there's children. And certainly there are parts of the country with or asbestos and lead-based pipe. But I think we'll have to look at that. If there were areas in Mesa that we had identified that were of concern, I think we would be working with federal agencies to find funding for that. So, but if council's aware of pockets of areas like that, then we certainly should look at it. But I don't think that's really come to our attention in a while. So.
Okay,
but I think Scott's right. I mean, just because the newer version of our construction, it probably don't see as much of that as you would in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I just wondering if residents do have, ask for support. I know asbestos is quite a, mold. It's quite expensive when you do that. So wondering if through our rehab program that we can we can maybe support in those ways if there is pockets out there.
So we could, the housing rehab program, we could have that conversation with them about the
if there's
funding for that.
So,
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Does that address your
Sure.
question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other? Did you have?
Oh, okay. Mr. Freeman.
Well, don't go very far, Scott. I was interested in the electric purchase power agreement for our Mesa utility and kind of the dynamics out there. Maybe Anthony might want to help you with that. But yeah, I know there's a lot of concern about hydroelectric and power and how our generation is happening for our municipality. So give us an overview of that and maybe the cost differentials. Are we paying more today than we did like last year, the year prior?
Sure. So I can give a general picture of
5D.
D as in dog, yeah.
Mayor and Council. So I'll give a general picture of how the hydropower outlook is right now. So we generally receive about 19-20% of our supplies for federal hydropower between The Colorado River Storage Project, which is on the agenda right now, that makes up about 5% of that 19%. And then the remainder is Parker Davis project. So for the CRSP, Colorado River Storage Project, CRISP, that's mostly Glen Canyon Dam. And as everybody knows, it's a little bit low right now. And so Western has come up with a few mechanisms that allow us to flex with what the river's doing. We're allowed to kind of reduce the capacity that we take, but the energy stays generally where it's supposed to be. And in terms of cost, it is our lowest cost resource right now. In the council report, I think we have around $30 a megawatt hour-ish, maybe 35, something like that. Whereas our aggregate cost of power is higher than that. So it is one of our lower cost resources, even though it's flowing less than it has historically. Now, you know, Western has certain commitments to us with how much energy they're going to deliver, and when the water falls short, they are on the market purchasing to make up that gap, and that is expensive and has brought costs up over the past few years as the rivers run lower. But it still remains, in aggregate, our lowest power supply resource.
Oh, good. And our commitment, did I read for 10 years? Do we have a 10-year on the PPA or?
This will be actually through 2057. So it's a very long-term commitment. The city does have the option, every time Western adjusts rates, we do have the option to say, no, thank you, Western, and leave the project. So there are off-ramps there in case things go sideways and we just can't stomach the rates anymore.
How many megawatts do we use as a utility?
This
Maybe an annual usage?
Yeah, so annually, our peak is 90 megawatts, and if we look at how much energy across the year, it's right around 350,000 megawatt hours. So, yeah, this makes up about 5% of that 350,000.
Okay, thank you. That were my questions.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, other questions regarding Monday's agenda? I know there's a lot of purchasing, things like that, because it's been
Yeah, and I'll
few
just
weeks.
mention this, I don't want, we need to be patient, but 5C will be significant for the Idea Museum, but now's not the time to be celebrating. We are approving this, and still the Gila River Indian Community still has to make their final decision, but $500,000 to the Idea Museum will be a big deal once they approve it, so we'll probably be coming back at a later date to acknowledge that.
Great. I noticed there's a few grants from Indian
Yeah.
communities on this agenda.
Yeah, just that much for one
Yeah,
project, is pretty significant, so.
that's great. We need to make sure we say thank you to Gila River for that generous donation.
Yeah, they still have to go through, there's still a more process to go
Okay.
through, but they have that on mind to find an opportunity to recognize them for that. So
Wonderful. Well, Council, while you're looking at this agenda, why don't we invite Miranda up and hear about, one of the items on the agenda is 5B, having to do with incorporation of one of our neighbors.
Good morning,
Miranda?
Mayor and Council. Welcome back. It's good to see you all in one place again. Miranda DeWitt, Government Relations Director here at the City of Mesa. Kelly.
Kelly Whittemore, Deputy City Attorney.
Sorry, Kelly, I should have welcomed you as well.
That's good.
So we promised to be brief this morning, but just wanted to take a quick moment to provide a little bit of background and context into this agenda item. This request really comes, or this resolution really comes at the request of the citizen group that is leading the incorporation efforts for Santan Valley. They are desirous to have an election 1 year from now, August 2025. But before they can collect petition signatures and before they can file with the Pinal County Board of Supervisors, there are a few statutory requirements they must meet first. One of which is obtaining a resolution from neighboring communities that meet a couple criteria. One, within 6 miles of the proposed boundaries, and two, if our population is more than the proposed boundaries population. So that includes the City of Mesa, and that includes the town of Gilbert. The town of Gilbert did approve their resolution last week. You have on your agenda for next Monday for consideration. I did just want to also share with you the proposed boundary map that shows its proximity to the city of Mesa. You'll see there's just 1.5 mile difference, so a very close neighbor to be if they are successful next year. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to Kelly if there's any additional comments she wanted to make, or take questions from mayor and council.
Julie?
Just wondering, what is the proposed population for the boundary area then?
Oh, thank you. I did mean to mention that. It's just over 90,000.
So that's why they don't have to get Queen Creek's
Correct.
approval?
However, they did get a resolution of support from Queen Creek.
Okay.
It's just not required.
Okay.
And Mayor and Council, can I just, this has been attempted
3 times.
3 times? Is it the third or the fourth?
This will be the
Fourth.
fourth.
Yeah, okay. I think early on, since the first initiative, the city has been early supporter of this. So I think for multiple reasons. One, we think cities are a good idea. We think they work well for residents and finding a way for them to have a voice in what's happening in their community and helping to direct their community resources. And this is certainly an area that's been exploding in population over many years. And then from kind of a corporate city of Mesa, since we have the gas utility in this area, working with a municipality we think would also be beneficial for that utility. So those were kind of 2 significant reasons why we endorse and support this, and we have every time they've come to us. So, but it's here again because this is another new initiative to go forward. So, thank you.
Scott?
There's a fiscal impact to other cities, correct? For state shared revenue?
Yeah.
What's that amount?
The estimates from the Arizona League of Cities and Towns is about $3 million.
Yeah, but
Okay,
yes.
all right. We just
That's
have
for
to-
the whole, but that gets divided.
That would be Mesa's impact.
Okay.
Mesa's impact 3 million. Okay, just heads up.
Yeah.
That's- We'll have to account for that. All right.
Yeah. Add that to the list of reductions we're going to see in the upcoming
Yeah.
budgets.
I'm just curious, has any municipality not voted to, surrounding Gilbert, I guess it would just be Gilbert? We've said yes every time, has.
Yeah,
said
Gilbert,
no?
Gilbert and Mesa are the only required municipalities, and Gilbert
Sometimes
did
they've had
support.
opposition to communities to their south and east, I guess. Florence, I don't know where Florence is on this one this time.
Florence is not required.
Right, but they've
and
often
they-
expressed their
They
opinion.
are not, to my knowledge, they have not taken a council vote
Okay,
this time.
yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
Good question. Apache Junction's growing, right? Is Apache Junction coming down close enough to impact this?
No.
No.
Mayor,
probably don't
Mayor,
need it.
Apache Junction's population is currently a little over 40,000, so no, they're still not
And
required.
Queen
because
Creek
the-
comes up to the
larger.
24, and Apache Junction is kind of like, that's the Mason-Dixon line, and so you have 24, I think, south is kind of Queen Creek, and 24
Okay.
north is
They're
Apache.
buffered by Queen Creek, yeah. All right. Thanks. Any other questions on this? Mr. Summers?
Are they required to, there's a fire district in this area. Are they required to get something from them? I don't think they're served by the fire district, but just north?
So Mayor, Councilmember Summers, the fire district doesn't come into play in terms of being able to put it on the ballot for the residents to be able to vote on it.
Gotcha. That's in the weeds anyway. I'll get out of there.
All right, well, I'm glad we're doing this. I think it's, as has been indicated, there will be a financial impact to our city, but it's still the right thing to do for the residents that live in that area. They've suffered through some sketchy infrastructure situations, and so this will, they're entitled to incorporate and to enjoy the same quality of life that we are. So hopefully this, fourth time's the charm for them. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions regarding our Monday agenda? All right, thank you. Then moving on, item 2A on this agenda is a presentation and update on the Rio Salado project, also known as Rio Reimagined.
You were a hotel
ago.
Like 7 years ago.
Yeah. I've seen that picture.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, and again, welcome back. We do have, this is very much a multi-departmental coordination and basically collaboration. In addition to it being a multi-jurisdictional collaboration, we do have most of the major departments that are directly involved with this project here. So before I go ahead, I'll just let them introduce themselves. We'll start with Maria.
Maria Lochner, Deputy Director for Economic Development.
Andrea Moore, Director, Parks, Rec, and Community Facilities.
Laura Heineman, Environmental and Sustainability.
Eric Kadarian, Assistant Transportation Director.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, so this project started about 57 years ago. And it's been revolving. It's been revolving over time. I think it started with just a study and a project by ASU students in a studio class, and then it began to really get traction and transform and evolved over the years. So what you're looking at right now is not officially designated area, but it's something that has been going on, the discussion that has been taking place for, over 50 years. And it involves 6 cities, 2 tribal nations, Maricopa County, SRP, Maricopa Association of Government, and then some nonprofit organization. So the whole area extends about 55 miles. And depending on how you look at, typically it's about 2 miles south of the Rio River and 2 miles north of the river. And I'll go through the specific map and Mesa in comparison to the actual location of the whole project. So just to give you really a good background or some background about how this program came about, it started, as I said earlier on, with ASU class, which started designing a concept plan along the Rio River, how it can be preserved, how we can harness the potential of the river. And then in 1987, the Rio Salado Development District actually created a concept plan covering about 38 miles, and Scott actually helped me because I was trying to do some research why this was vetoed by voters. It was actually a county vote where they were trying to get funding for the project, but it was vetoed by the voters, so it didn't really proceed in terms of funding for the project. And then they continued to revolve, the conversation continued over the years. And then in 2017, Senator McCain and Congressman Ed Pastor actually got elected officials, which Mesa was one of those cities, to come together to sign a statement of intent to really establish commitment to harnessing the potential of the river and also create some sense of commitment that they're going to be involved as we move forward. And ASU was identified to be the facilitator of this multi-jurisdictional collaborative work. And then back in 2023, which I think all of you were on the council, if you remember, the city of Mesa was a signatory to an IGA and then or memorandum of understanding to fund an ambassador who was going to really help coordinate the functions and the all the jurisdictions, the efforts that are involved, because all these years, even though ASU was designated as a facilitator, there was no specific dedicated funded position to really help with that. So the city council agreed to pay $15,000 a year for a period of 4 years to have this professional come in to coordinate and organize a group function. So with all that, what has been the aspiration of the whole project basically comes down to 4 broader categories. One is to reconnect the community to the river, to bring us to the foundation of the river and harness its potential, acknowledge basically its potential for recreation, and then also protect the environmental nature of the river and improve our ecosystem or protect the ecosystem. And also have a good metropolitan vision of all the jurisdictions and the cities that basically abuts the river as well. And then capitalize on the potential economic growth of using the river as a resource. And then also definitely make sure to protect the environmental and sustainability of the river, and also protect the water storage and its reuse of the river as well. So with that, this is again showing the whole span of the river. So what are you looking at right now? I gave you the 55 miles. This area you're looking at is very specific to Mesa, the Mesa city boundaries. As you look here, the 2 miles south of the river is where we have the dark shaded area, which is Mesa. So this is the Mesa city boundaries. And before I continue, I actually forgot to introduce, we do have ASU and the Maricopa Association of Government staff here as well. Maggie and Cecilia sitting behind us, sorry guys. They've really been working with us and all the jurisdictions as well. I know initially the 2 miles north of the river extended beyond the northern boundaries of the city limits, but with various meetings and conversations with the tribe, basically ASU and MAG, the tribe recommended we modify that because in the future they may consider that, but for right now they want that section to be taken out of the 2 mile coverage of the northern part of the city. So that's why the previous maps some of you may have seen have been adjusted because of the conversation with the tribe. So we wanted as a city to really categorize and simplify it into 3 categories of the aspirations of the using the river or harnessing the potential, and then also make sure that each department takes its fair portion of what they can do to accomplish this goal. So with that, we categorized it into 3: environmental, recreation, and economic opportunity. So all the departments here are going to go through what we as a city have been doing already. So there are so many projects that we are doing besides waiting for this to fully take place. And then we also have potential works that we will be working with MAG and all the stakeholders that are involved to really proceed with this project. So with that, I will pass on to Eric.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. So in front of you is a map of both our existing and our future shared use path network. And although the river itself doesn't necessarily flow through Mesa, we are planning and we want our shared use path network to be a good connection to the river. We have the existing Rio Salado pathway and Stadium Connector pathway in the Riverview area that's along the river. We currently have a pathway under construction, the phase 1 of the Lehigh Loop, that will be close, and then some other purple lines on the map here that will connect those trail systems and also get us further out to the northeast section of Mesa. So internally to the city, we do have a plan. We're working towards that as we go. And also then on the next slide, we also want to make sure that we're connecting to more regional systems outside of Mesa. So currently we connect to the city of Tempe's shared use pathway network, and you can connect into Scottsdale and Phoenix to the west along the river, but also looking to partner with the county as we move east and connect and make sure we have viable options with the Maricopa Trail.
So Mayor, Council, the next slide here highlights the shapes are all city properties that are within that boundary, parks and other facilities like Public Safety Training Center, Household Hazardous Waste Center, with the addition of the parks. The parks are listed there, so there's about 300 acres of parkland within that boundary area. And then specifically to this effort, we have 2 projects that we're highlighting that are adding to the Rio Reimagined recreation assets. First one's labeled A, that's Mountain Vista Trail up by Thomas and Recker, and that one is under construction now. So that's a half mile. We have a small trailhead there, a half-mile trail going between a housing community that's in construction and an industrial site. And that will be open hopefully by the end of November. So we're excited about that. And then B up there is in planning efforts. So that's future Mesa Trail. We just started a consultant to take a look at what that alignment looks like, but it's along the Maricopa County Flood Control District land, the CAP property, canal property, to create connections from McKellips all the way up to Granite Reef Dam area, where then it can connect into additional CAP trails, that dotted line that's to the north there, and the Tano National Forest trail system in the Huz area.
Good morning. This map overlays our Trees Are Cool tree prioritization map in this area, showing where we have very high priority areas, and medium priority areas. Those are areas with low tree canopy coverage, high service level temperatures, and high calls for service. And it also looks at demographics to some extent. So it just kind of identifies opportunities for planting in that area. This next slide talks about how stormwater or rainwater flows through our site and how it meets the river. Those dark purple areas are where rainfall flows directly to the river. The areas that are not purple and that are light blue in this case, those areas have retention. So stormwater is held on a site, it soaks into the ground, and it's to be able to use for vegetation. So we have some opportunities, we feel, in the dark purple areas. And both the Northwest Water Reclamation Plant and the Center Street Yard are within the Rio Reimagined boundaries. Those two sites are important ones as we look at our food waste to energy project. We've identified 5 projects that could be implemented in this area. You know, mitigating heat through the addition of additional tree canopy cover, looking at healthy riparian habitats, really looking at how we can enhance those areas, and then utilizing green stormwater infrastructure, which is that those devices that capture stormwater and hold them on the site for use by landscaping, and then study water quality issues along the river, and then explore the closed loop energy generation with the food waste project.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. Related to economic development opportunities, we first identified undeveloped land as our first approach. Undeveloped land within the project study area that could be developed or improved in some way, shape, or form. On your map in front of you, you see all the green parcels. They represent about 1,000 acres of land that is currently within the city of Mesa, and only about 110 acres of land that is in the county. Next slide. Okay. The second approach is to look at disturbed land within the city boundary, and that's represented on this map by the brown areas. Disturbed land means it's not improved or not developed, but has been disturbed perhaps by a former use, could be mining or pit use or farming or something of that nature. So the brown areas represent 234 acres within the city of Mesa and 335 acres in the county. The area in yellow is the Longbow area. That represents a current opportunity that we are working on. We have already engaged with a consultant and done a study working with all of the property owners to see how we can work together to improve their lands, to create new amenities, new retail destinations, et cetera, by having a more collaborative vision for the area. And then by taking this approach, looking at lands that are within our study area, we have the opportunity to look for funding, for example, for remediation, which could help property owners with their pre-development costs. You know, we could help that by providing a grant. And then by working together, we can look at enhanced opportunities for retail and other new amenities that could be developed in the area.
Mayor Council, so what you're looking at is really a combination of all the programs from the various departments that are being taking place at this location or these boundaries of the Rio River. So the next steps of this project, right now, the Maricopa Association of Government is working with all the cities to actually put out an RFP to hire a consultant to come in to really help all the jurisdictions to come up with public engagement process, because this, even though this has been going on for so many years, there's not been extremely strong public engagement with all the various communities. So they want to create that collaborative effort and come up with strategies of how to engage the community. As part of that, that consultant will also help with a plan of what needs to be put out together for an RFP to really create a master plan. So this first phase of RSP, which they are calling just a scoping strategy, that will help us really formulate agenda and various things that needs to be put into an actual RFP to hire a consultant to come in and help all the jurisdictions to create a master plan to really pursue the goals of the river. One of the things that we have done, I think when we met with Maricopa Association of Government, they were really pleased with MESA, because what we've done and what we are doing is actually some of the major vision that they are trying to get a consultant to really come and help. But we have really been doing that. So we will look forward to coordinate and collaborate with the consultant and with all the other jurisdictions as well to really come up with all the strategies of achieving the aspiration and the goal of the river. Another thing that happened, I think, beginning of this year, as part of the program, they are forming what they call the 501c3 to really bring certain community leaders into collaborating with the various stakeholders and public leaders. And I know Councilmember Goforth has been part of that group. Mayor nominated her to be part of it. And the goal of that is to really help bring funding or look for funding sources, in addition to the whole area being designated as part of the U.S. Urban Waters back in 2020, which gives us the opportunity to access certain federal funding. The 501c3 group will also help solicit private investment into the accomplishing the goals of the project. So our goal is to really give the council an update. I know some of you have been involved or have been receiving updates, but we wanted to make sure that you are all informed, and then we will continue to inform the council as to the next steps and as the process continues. So with that, I will pass on for any questions.
Councilmember Goforth, we appreciate you representing us in some of these discussions as well. Anything you'd like to add to the presentation?
Just thank you for all the work you've done. As I think MAG has rightly identified, City of Mesa has done a great job of evaluating the area. What have we done? What does the future perhaps look like, some of the future projects? And so thank you for that work. And I think this is a great project. I like the direction that the meeting that I attended. I went to the MAG meeting where elected officials represented each of the cities, and I like the direction. I think collaborating and coming up with a plan, a master plan, not necessarily that takes away from what each individual city may be doing or plans that they have put in place in the past, but moving forward, this is such an important natural resource. I think to leverage those opportunities, we have to work together. So I agreed with the direction that the meeting stakeholders decided to go in, which was to go out for an RFP to really kind of come up with a plan of how we move forward together in a cohesive way. So,
great, thank you. Thanks for doing that. Ms. Pillsbury.
Hi, yes, thank you. So MAG is who's actually going to be in charge of getting the consultant?
Yes, with the with collaboration with all the jurisdictions. I think it's 11 multi-jurisdictions, 6 cities, SRP, tribal Nations and all that. So they are the one leading that, but we all have been providing input as to.
So
what
is that included in our 15,000 we're putting in for 4 years, or will there be a new expense for the consultant fee?
That is actually privately funded by council.
Oh, it's,
This first RFP is privately funded.
oh, okay. And so then does what role is ASU still playing in this? We need more chairs up there.
It's a big group effort.
Yeah, it's
Good morning, everyone. I'm Maggie Sofel. I'm with Arizona State University. Thanks for having me today. So we are working in what we're calling a core operations team. So this is Arizona State University, Maricopa Association of Governments, Greater Phoenix Leadership, who's standing up the C3, and Cindy Batak, who is sitting behind me, is the ambassador to the Urban Waters Federal Partnership Program, which is funded by that $15,000. So together, we're gonna be working on this phase 1 RFP, which is actually gonna be released by ASU so that we're following the state standards for that procurement process. And it's funded through private dollars that Greater Phoenix Leadership secured for that, just for that phase 1 scoping process. But we're gonna work as a core operations team in managing that consultant's work and coordinating with all the jurisdictions and the external partners.
And so is the consultant's not looking at each separate city necessarily, but just the whole thing in general, and then each city continues to work on their own city?
That's right. And part of the discussion at the meeting that Councilmember Goforth was a part of was really emphasizing that a regional scale plan of this type, you know, it's really a vision, an overarching umbrella to pull all of those pieces together, because there are 6 cities, 2 tribes, unincorporated areas of the county, SRP, and then a lot of nonprofits and community-based organizations doing work in the corridor. And so, you know, as Nana mentioned, this has been going on for almost 60 years. So we need to acknowledge all of that work and all the plans that are already in place. And so it's really an effort to kind of stitch those things together and make, you know, the region in this river corridor really more competitive for some of the federal funding that's out there to tell that higher level regional narrative.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Council, other questions on this? Mr. Freeman?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I was with Mr. Luna 7 years ago when we signed the letter to participate in this. So I felt like, could we have more traction with this, you know, over 7 years, and it's been very slow. So, and I believe we do have some acreage in Mesa that does touch all of this. I mean, city-owned property, and I believe from a prior conversation with Mr. Butler that we have some EPA ready or land over by Riverview. I can't remember, Scott, if that's the case, you told me, but regardless, you don't have to answer. But if we have land that's already approved for the project, I think that puts us ahead of everybody else in the process. And then we do have private ownership on properties along the riverbank, and I appreciate the trails going in. So I guess my question is, how do you see this proceeding for ASU being the facilitator? Because I appreciate that. But are we going to, what is maybe our cost for the future? Do we know that in the next, over the next couple of years? Is it $15,000? Is it going to be more? But regardless, I think the implementation of all this, all the way from Granite Reef all the way out to Buckeye is an important concept in utilizing the river. So I guess my question is, what are we looking for? Future costs potentially, or do we have an idea?
Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, right now the cost incurred on us is the $15,000 commitment for 4 years, which we already have that money set aside.
When did that start? The 15?
Last year.
Last year. Okay.
So that's what we've committed to. I know once the consultant finishes the scope work and then we do come up with an actual plan, there may be future costs based on what comes out of the plan, that when that happens, that may open up a different conversation.
Okay. Well, I know there's some future private land sales along the river that could happen, that could impact this whole, you know, portions of the development, but regardless, I mean, the vision of this is awesome. I mean, I support it. I know others, I've talked to other private land ownership to the east, they're on board. But the concept, we just have to stay in continuity with them, visit with the private landowners, let them know what we're doing so that they can be part of the process. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. This is not an action item, but we've already taken the action, I think, to facilitate what you're discussing. So thank you for the good update. Oh, I'm sorry, was there another question? Oh, I'm sorry.
It wasn't a question, it's just a comment. That is this one, I learned about it some years ago, Vice Mayor, and I attended a meeting, and I was so excited about it. I lived in Northeast Mesa for a very long time and moved down in the downtown area about 15 years ago. And the one thing I really miss, and I sometimes think about where I'm living, is the access to a natural environment. Yes, we have parks, but I'm talking about a natural environment. Just to be able to walk someplace and have a sense of nature and open space, especially in the western part of the city where we have a high density, very little open space, few HOAs that provide their own amenities and such like that. And it just gave me hope, like, as we grow, as we densify, to have this is such an amenity to all our residents, a sense of well-being, connection to nature, and I think it'll do very well for the metropolitan area. So we're at more of the upstream side of it as far as the project, right?
Yeah, so this is a Mesa boundary, if you can see. This is the city limits, starts here. So this is really the city limit. So the dark shaded buffer here is the 2 miles south of the river bank. That's the area within the city limit that we are focusing on.
Yeah, but the flow of the river is from the east, right, to the west?
So, yeah.
Right, right. And so, given that, does any improvements or anything that we do affect the downstream side of it, or not necessarily? I mean, is that, or is it just a development around a natural waterway?
I think Scott can help me because there was a study that was done by the Corps of Engineers years ago that
No, you're not getting away that easy. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I actually thought I was going to get away that easy after several years of being involved in this project. I think what Nana is referring to is that initially the way the city engaged in this project was back in the mid-2000, about 2005, 2006, right after Mr. Brady had come to the city. This was an Army Corps of Engineers project called the Vashalai Akmel project. That was a partnership between the city of Mesa and the Salt River Indian community. That was a in the river project, wetlands restoration, other improvements to drainage and other things along the corridor that then had some recreational components to it. I think what we've seen is that project stalled because of some priorities that the Salt River Pima community had going into the recession and some of the economies along the riverbed. So after that stalled out, it's really taken this focus of what can we do along the river, private land, public lands, others outside the bank. And I think that's what the majority of this project is, but that's not stopping projects in the riverbed in the city of Phoenix and in Goodyear and other places from moving forward as well. So now it's a mixture of the two, whereas our initial engagement was really more focused in the river and wetlands restoration.
Well, the improvements create a flow. It's dry most of the time, isn't it? I don't know.
Mayor and Councilmember Duff, that was part of the Vashalai design, had been returning some flowing river to that portion between the 101 and roughly to Country Club in that area of the river. And so that would have been part of the federal project.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Scott, I don't know if you know, where did the 1 to 2 mile or Nana area come from? Do you know?
Just
focus.
Mayor and council member, going back to some of the discussions, probably as Councilmember Freeman alluded to, about 7 or so years ago when Senator McCain became very involved in this project and wanted to see this as a major project in the region. I think it was just the ability to try to capture in an area that made reasonable sense to the tie-in to the river, to the river alignment. I don't think there was any rhyme or reason or federal designation that went along with that. I think after the stakeholders made some decisions, they felt that that was a reasonable catchment area.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you again. I think with that, appreciate the great update. Look forward to hearing more. Moving on, item 2B on our agenda is a presentation and update on Mesa's Climate Action Plan projects. Scott, Laura, welcome back.
Good morning again, Mayor, Council. Scott Boucher, I'm the Energy and Sustainability Director here at the City of Mesa. I'm joined by Laura Heineman, who's our Deputy Director over Environmental and Sustainability. And today we're going to give you an update. We've talked previously about coming back, giving regular updates about the Climate Action Plan. So today we're going to talk about kind of overall programs, projects, the progress that we've made, the impact that these projects will have. And as we go through that, just one of the thoughts, the infrastructure projects that we're doing, they do take a while to get them implemented. By the time you get through from an idea through design, bidding it out and construction and actually having it operating, it does take time. And so I think you'll see through here that there's phases of projects that we're working on and progress that we're making. In addition to that, it requires the help of so many departments within the City of Mesa. Again, Laura and I get to come up here and speak about this, but there's so much work that happens across the city in order for these projects to happen. So I just want to say thank you to all of those folks who put in that effort. As part of this of doing multiple presentations and coming back on a regular basis, I'll let you know our next presentation, we're planning on it being about trees. And we'll introduce Stephen Addison, who is our urban forester who has started, and we'll have that discussion in the fall as we get into the planning season to talk about trees and the progress that Stephen's been making. And also I would be interested, Laura and I would be interested in hearing other areas that council would be interested in us discussing as we come back through this process. So with that, we will go to the first one with Laura.
So this presentation has been organized around the 4 aspirational goals to show that we're really working towards accomplishing, making progress on those goals. The first is carbon neutrality by 2050. These are clean energy, zero emission projects. There's 3 that have been funded through the MCAP designated funding. That's the Community EV Master Plan, Electric Fleet Charging Infrastructure, and then Workplace Charging Study. I'd like to really focus on the Electric Fleet Vehicle Charging Infrastructure project. We have 71 electric vehicles, fleet vehicles that have been delivered, 19 on order. There are significant environmental benefits of those vehicles, and there are also financial benefits. There will be a reduced cost for fuel per vehicle per year. There is another community benefit for our working on this project. This is phase 3. We've been working on this project for a number of years. Mesa is on the leading edge of installing this type of infrastructure and this new technology. We have been learning lessons. We've been working with utilities on solutions, vendors and contractors. How do we actually do this? That puts us in a very good position. We have a very real world perspective on what it takes to transition fleets as we talk to people in the community. I also want to mention we have our MCAP implementation plan, and this does help us implement strategy of decarbonized transportation. The City of Mesa, the Fleet Services Department has added electricity to their vehicle uses dashboard. So you can see a little tiny green sliver of electricity at the top of the final bars. You will see that represents the electricity that we're using as fuel. That will grow over time as the gasoline and diesel is reduced. This data, along with many other sets of data that show how we're making progress on MCAP, are available on our public data portal at the Sustainable Environment Strategic Initiatives page. So back to our carbon neutrality. Using that clean energy efficiently is really a key to success of this program. MCAP has funded 3 projects that had to do with efficiency: lighting at city buildings, lighting at Red Mountain Ball Fields, and a future lighting project at sports fields. As you can see, there is significant financial savings from making this investment, and there's also environmental benefits. We're reducing our energy usage, and therefore there is carbon pollution reduction. I would like to mention that the City of Mesa has earned the SRP Sustainable Champion Award this year, and that shows us and confirms that the Mesa is investing in projects that matter with the electric fire truck and EV charging.
Okay, from the renewable energy side, so flare to fuel, we've talked about, again, this is one of those projects where I say it takes a while, but we are so close with this project. We're really anticipating the end of the year that we'll be cutting a ribbon and beginning the operation of the flare to fuel equipment, which will upgrade the existing biogas that's generated from our digesters at the Northwest plant and put it into our natural gas utility. And then that gas, its usage is going to be shown in our solid waste vehicles. It'll be about 1/3 of the usage of natural gas that we have for our solid waste fleet. Will be from a renewable energy source that currently is flared. So we are very excited and ready for that project to complete construction and begin producing renewable natural gas for the city. In addition to that, we've been here with a couple of solar projects. We're looking at a November timeframe for beginning construction at the main library and our 6th Street Service Center for solar that's going to be installed that will both generate renewable energy for the electric utility that the city owns, but also create shade for our employees and for the patrons of the Mesa Public Library. So very much looking forward to that project. It should be, like I said, should begin construction in November, and I think the schedule has them finishing up sometime in February or maybe early March. So just as it starts to warm up, there'll be shade for our employees and for the folks that use the library. We also have a biomass agreement with SRP. So SRP is a great partner of ours that we work with on a lot of different things from both the energy side, water side. This is a project, the biomass project, that hits both water and energy. So it creates renewable energy by taking trimmings from the forest and doing thinning of the forest, which helps protect that forest from, hopefully protect it from catastrophic fires that would then affect water quality, because that is really the watershed that we get a lot of our water from when you are looking at the Salt River in the amount of water that we get from there. So this is an interesting one. Sometimes I think of it when we talk about trees, you know, the right tree, right place. And this is a situation where we're actually taking out trees in order to try and keep those forests healthy, but using it as a renewable energy source. Yes.
Slide. On the flare to fuel, you said about it'll provide about 1/3 of the CNG that we use for solid waste.
Right.
Will it grow from there? Is that the full capacity? Or, I mean, what's the future outlook from 1/3? Is that a stable or will it grow?
So that will be dependent. There's a couple of things. So there's flows to the Northwest plant that have happened since it's been built. Currently, there's some work happening at the Northwest plant, so the flows are down at that plant. So if the flows are down, there'll be less biogas that's produced. But once the work is done at the Northwest plant, we get flows back to their normal historical flows that we have. You will see that that will be about 1/3 of the usage that the solid waste fleet has. Now, in order to increase the production of biogas, what we've talked about, this is a phased approach. We have our food to energy program, and that's this next slide here. We actually have funding in place, and solid waste is working on the design. So we're beginning the design. Laura was kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier in her presentation at the Center Street Yard which is next to our household hazardous materials facility. So the idea of this is that we'll be able to take food waste, process that food waste at that facility at Center Street, take the food waste slurry to the digesters at the Northwest plant, and that will increase the production. It'll about double the production of biogas that happens. So we'd go from 1/3 to 2/3. It's going to be dependent on how the digesters handle it. It'll be over a period of time. You won't be able to just automatically go to 40 tons a day of food waste that goes into there. The digesters will have to get acclimated, and so it'll be a process. And then we'll see, looking at, because we had done work with ASU on what it looks like from a standpoint of how much food waste the digesters can handle. And so there's some indicators that we would be tracking on that. I will mention, this isn't a little bit of sad news maybe. We did apply for the CPRG grant, so the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. And this was one of the projects that was included in that grant proposal that we had. If you recall, it was a regional grant that we applied for with the city of Phoenix, Tempe, and the state of Arizona in Maricopa County. We were not successful. We were not selected for that CPRG grant. But I do truly believe this is the type of project, even in our discussions with EPA, they were excited about this type of project. So I think moving forward with design and having something that would be ready when there's other grant opportunities that present themselves, that we have a shovel-ready project, so to speak, is still going to be a good opportunity for the city of Mesa. But that's what this project will do, is increase that biogas production. The system that we put in place at the Northwest plant is designed to handle flows once food waste is put into the digesters. Huh?
The fourth aspirational goal is climate-ready community. MCAP funding is being used to help our residents participate and make a difference, take action with regard to climate. The regional partners for Water Use It Wisely and the City of Mesa increased their contributions to the Water Use It Wisely campaign, and they really focused on getting the message out to the entire region, and they just exceeded their expectations. 34 million impressions, which meant that people were aware of the campaign. They could take a look at the website, find great information, and they could think about how they use water wisely. At the same time, in the City of Mesa, the sustainability team launched a campaign called Your Water, Your Impact. That is designed to help customers view their usage on their utility bill, use the City of Mesa's water calculator to look at what's the estimated water use for a household that size, and then compare the two. And there are tips about how people can save water. They created 2 videos to promote this campaign. At the end of July, they had more than 160,000 views of the video, and people are reacting and participating in that initiative. We also are using MCAP funds to do a Grass to Xeriscape project around selected city buildings. 55 North Center, we have an opportunity to remove that grass and show people how beautiful Xeriscape can be. We will also use it as kind of a demonstration project. How do you protect trees during that conversion and make sure they remain? We just have a wonderful opportunity. There's an awful lot of customers that come through those doors, and so we have a chance to talk to them about that. That project just started.
So, we're getting new buildings, so maybe the buttons will work in that one. So on this issue, you talk about 34 million impressions, but how many clicks did we have on that? Do we know?
I can get you that report.
Okay, yeah, because impressions and clicks are different. Different level of engagement.
And the campaign involved a lot of new ways to engage with people. You know, whether you're at the gas station and it pops up on a video screen, if you're at a restaurant, it pops up on the video screen. So that's what they call impressions.
Right.
But they do a great job of collecting data, and I will make sure to get you that report.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm just curious as to how well people are interacting with this.
Very
because
good question.
That last component you just discussed, the Grass to Xeriscapes, there's an item on our agenda coming up for some funding for that within the parks and the buildings. And I've had a few folks within the HOAs in my district interested in what the city's doing, right, because we're funding that as well. But I've also had a little bit of fear, because there's some concern that, well, they're trying to take away all our park grass, which is not the case. We're just trying to get rid of the grass that doesn't serve a purpose. It's just ornamental, and it just soaks up water. So I love this idea of using the city buildings. I'd like to see something maybe on our side of town, districts 5 and 6, too, where we take the park and we make it a demonstration for, and invite the HOAs and anybody out to see before and after, and what we're really talking about when we're saying it's time to remove that excess grass that doesn't serve a purpose.
Mayor, Councilmember Summers, that's a terrific lead into the next comment here about the WIFA funding. So the City of Mesa Conservation Team was very successful in getting WIFA funding. They're referring to it as non-functional turf, and the item that's on the agenda on Monday will look at that area just around the perimeter of a park, removing that grass. It's non-recreational. It's difficult to do recreation in those areas. The other project that received funding was for non-residential customers, which are the HOAs, to give them, to build on the current programs we have, Grass to Xeriscape and non-residential in HOAs. Certainly working with them to preserve that grass that, you know, serves kids playing ball and that has a purpose, but then being able to get the funding to remove the grass that is not usable. And with that, the HOAs will get access to some software that looks at what is your actual water usage, what do you need to be watering based on weather and plant type, and so the HOAs will be able to hone in their water use so it's more exact.
Yeah.
And then also we are adding some landscape assessments as part of that process. I think I know the Parks Group is working on a demonstration in a park that goes to exactly what you're talking about. How do you take that programmed space and how do you make conversions? But that's really a project that the Parks Group is leading, so I'd love to have them be able to.
Right, and just as an anecdote, in my own neighborhood in the Eastmark area, they have all those pocket parks.
Yes.
And they're fantastic. They had green space there where the kids play. But a lot of them, they're also used dual purpose. They're used for storm drainage, right? Retention. But the sides, so some of them are pretty deep. The sides go down and they have grass on them that serves no purpose. You're not kicking a soccer ball on that. But maintaining the base of that basin for that purpose and re-landscaping would save a lot of water. So, you know, doing these projects in different neighborhoods throughout the city will show people what we're talking about. Because there is some little angst over what that might look like. Because I wouldn't want all that turned into just rock, right? It does serve a purpose.
Yeah.
No, that is
Love it.
very spot on comment. Thank you.
Laura, I don't know. I had a conversation with an HOA in the Far East part of my district, and they were trying to do some turf to xeriscape conversion, and it wasn't possible. Were you involved? I can't give you the details because I can't remember all of them, but they said they spoke with somebody in the sustainability department. Was that you by any chance? Because I know there are some issues that maybe we...
It wasn't me. I'd be happy to get that information, and let's, if one HOA is facing these challenges, others are too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where we need to keep responding to customer concerns and get information that we can help people make this.
Okay.
So the question, they couldn't do it or they couldn't get funding for it?
They couldn't convert for some reason. Well, they didn't, I think ultimately they did not qualify for the funding for
That's
it
a good- yeah,
to
that's-
convert.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that could be the case.
And but if there's some hurdles that maybe
Yeah.
makes, sense, like you said, it's got to probably impact more than one HOA that we can kind of look through. But anyway, thank you.
Yes. Thank you for the feedback.
There are some restrictions on that turf, that incentive, and we might need to take a look at them to see if make them more user-friendly.
If you have a willing
Yeah.
One of the things we were able to do with this WIFA grant was reduce that square footage of grass that was required to participate in the project. That was one of the intentions. But again, it's getting that feedback from customers and understanding the need, and then we will work on a solution. I wanted to roll into trees another very important initiative that is going. The city has funded shade tree events. We held 2 in the spring and 2 are planned in the fall. September 19th, they'll be holding the workshop in the the Mesa Electric area, and then October 21st, they'll hold a workshop in Reed Park. That is a community that was selected to host the next round of tree distributions. We are working, again, we've just started this program. We're learning what works, what doesn't, and how we can do this more effectively in our community. So with the neighborhood planting events, they'll most likely be more community-based programs, and we'll come back to you with more information about that as we move forward. I want to remind people to record your tree on the Trees Are Cool website so that we can meet our 1 million tree goal by 2050. We've been getting some questions about how do you plant 1 million trees in the desert, especially when water customers are concerned about water. That again is a very important question that we have a good response for. And that is that by planting desert trees, those trees that thrive in our environment with natural rainfall with some supplemental irrigation, those are the trees we want to be planting. There is a term called desertification, hard to even say, but areas that have no trees are hotter and drier than areas with trees. So it's that messaging to people that this really affects the microclimate and the water that we have there. The last bullet point there is the trees in city parks and along walkways at city facilities. The community has an opportunity to see these trees, and there are a great variety that are desert adapted, to be able to see them in place and understand how they could impact their own home and areas. So trees have all sorts of benefits, and using our own planting as a guide is helpful for people.
I know we've talked about this subject before, and it's a bit, I guess I would say maybe controversial, but is how have we changed our design guidelines, our landscape guidelines, to incorporate this goal of shade coverage? Have we done that at all?
We just met with planning yesterday, a planner yesterday. We had a consultant do some plans, some very typical commercial development, multifamily development, single-family homes, a school and a park. What does 15% look like? Can you do that with the design standards that we have now? It's surprising, it is doable. I think what we need to do is meet with planning and then come back with those exhibits and information for you.
Great.
We're just starting those discussions, but those renderings, those graphics just really help.
Great. Glad to hear that we're moving forward with that. Thank you.
Hopefully planning heard that. I see
yes.
they're nodding their heads.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They're very much advocates for this. To go with Scott, what he said when we opened this up, there's departments throughout the city that are making investments to ensure that our infrastructure is resilient, that our city service is resilient, and that the way we operate is resilient. And all of this is intended to support a healthy, vibrant city for future generations. I've included a snapshot of the Hacktivate students. They took data and they looked at alternatives, and they were thinking about urban heat and water. So here is the next generation that's going to pick up this program from us. It's important as we move forward that we do keep up the pace that we've got started here, and that's through community engagement strong partnerships with the community and what I call community building, just getting people engaged and informed and helping them come up with solutions. We're doing this through supporting grants for organizations that are working in our communities, and it's fun to let you have a little insight into the Bloomberg Philanthropies offered the city of Mesa $50,000 to distribute in micro grants to youth in our communities working on climate projects. We've gotten those applications. There are some very strong ones. We'll be coming forward with that as we move forward. We will continue to focus on education of K through 80. The universities are doing wonderful research, and they're letting, and the community colleges, and they're letting students test solutions, learn about innovation, and then the K through 12 education is just, introducing these ideas to our students while they're still in school. All education at all levels is really focused on workforce development in these areas.
With that, that's our update that we have on the Climate Action Plan. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
I might have one question, but also just some comments. Thank you. This is exciting to see, and it's been, I think we were all, we're proud of our Climate Action Plan, but I think we're all committed to making sure that it's not something that sits on a shelf, and that every department in our city is looking for innovative ways to make progress on it. So it's exciting to see that that's actually happening. I appreciate on the carbon neutrality goal, I appreciate pointing out that there are reasons separate from concern about the environment to pursue these goals, the cost savings associated with electric vehicles, and the fact that I think it was just this week the EPA moved our region from to serious in terms of non-attainment as ozone. And the recipe for ozone is vehicle emissions and sunlight. So if we're gonna, just addressing the health, the air quality in our community, this is an important goal to pursue. I appreciate that fourth pillar where we wanted to engage the community. I think we're all kind of wondering, we don't know what this means. We'll go out and bump around and see if we find ways to engage the community, but it's exciting to see things like water conservation. I know from some of the public opinion polling we've been doing is something that the public is very anxious to see us engage in. So that's great, along with the tree initiative. So it's just fun to see this mature and see the directions that it's going. The one pillar that I don't notice that we discussed has to do with the landfill reduction. I assume that's because in previous conversations we've talked about our recycling efforts, but is there anything, maybe that slide went by me and I didn't catch it.
When Scott was talking about the food waste project, we really focused on that for materials management.
All right, so that's reducing food waste going to the landfill.
So because the impact of that is about 10,000, as we talked about, it would be, feeding those digesters over a period of time, but you're looking at about 10,000 tons of food waste diverted per year that would come from that. I believe the Blue Barrel's always been about 32,000 is what we get from the Blue Barrel program that gets diverted. And I'm sure there's still progress that's being made on design of the MRF down at Pecos and Sossaman, so I'm sure there'll be presentations coming back on that also.
Yeah, Mayor, we'll probably have that discussion when we talk about solid waste and the rates. Again, for us, it's access to the market. It's not something we can just decide we're going to do. We are totally dependent on the market and who's available to do recycling. And in the past 5 years, that's gone away from us. So we keep working with vendors, trying to identify opportunities. We think there's some opportunities, but because we're driven by the market. I saw yesterday where Republic Services is suggesting, what was it, Mark, 40% rate increases for tipping fees at landfills, 40%. So it's not only a save the world, it's trying to save dollars, but Republic is a dominant force in all this. So we're trying to find options to recycle, but also just ways to dispose of our waste cheaper. So it's quite a battle right now.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing that hopefully develop in a good way. All right, council, any additional questions on this, Ms. Gold?
I just have a comment, and thank you as well. I just want to say thank you as well for all that you're doing on this. But my comment is just about the grass to xeriscape. I think and this might help with some of the fears of the turf going away. But if we can really make sure that if there are other functional uses for those areas, that we do that. So I recall in a couple months ago when you all presented on that, and I know it's a parks decision. We were taking out some turf and putting in xeriscape. And Jen had mentioned, it's a natural area that people ride their bikes. Could we maybe make that a trail? And it wasn't going to work out for that particular space. But I really hope that we look at those kinds of things instead of just putting in rock. If we can do some of those types of things, that we can substitute a functional space.
Councilmember Goforth, that's really a lovely idea, and some of Mesa's city parks are great examples of how you can turn our desert into just a beautiful playground. So we will, that's great feedback. We will promote those. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Great report. Next item on our agenda, item 3A, is to convene an executive session for the city magistrate interviews. Is there a motion? Mr. Summer?
Would you like to handle item 5 and 6 for that?
I'm sorry, say which item?
5 and 6, the meeting minutes and the events and summaries.
You're going to come back out here. We've got people waiting, so whatever you want to do.
Is there, so if we do is there anybody who wants to see 5 and 6 who won't be here when we come back? So I think we have to come back out here to make a motion to put the names on the agenda. So we can't adjourn from the executive session.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I was hoping.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, then next item is to convene an executive session for the purpose of the city magistrate interviews. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Heredia and Ms. Goforth. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That passes unanimously, and we will go into the conference room for those discussions and then come back out.
Everyone's gonna miss.
Reconvening after our executive session. Next item on our agenda is to provide direction on the names of the 2 finalists that will be placed on a future city council meeting for appointments as city magistrate, so that everyone knows we have 2 vacant magistrate positions currently, and that is why we're naming 2 finalists. Also, we want to thank everyone that has applied, especially the 4 excellent finalists that interviewed today. The consensus of our group was all 4 of these individuals would make amazing and will make amazing judges. Council, would one of you like to name the 2 candidates you would like to put on a future council agenda for appointment to be a city magistrate?
Mayor, I'd like to make that motion, please. I'd like to place on the agenda Amy Haley and Jeff Balin.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Motion made by Mr. Freeman, seconded by Mr. Summers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion passes unanimously, and congratulations to all of those individuals.
Are we allowed to make a comment? Can I make
Sure.
a comment?
Sure.
Is that all right? I just want to say that I think I speak for everyone that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do on council. I found it harder than when I had to do it in 2021. I think we all wish we could hire all 4 of you, and I just want to thank all 4 of you for the incredible human beings that you are. I'm going to cry. Yeah, anyways. It was really impressive and very hard decision.
Yeah. And I'll just add, for the 2 individuals that weren't moved forward, I was clearly impressed that you're going to be great judges. You certainly have the temperament and the qualifications, and that there's no question in my mind that that's what your future holds. But thank you so much. We are. Oh, thank you. And let's do note that there was an extraordinary amount of effort and work that went into this process by the Judicial Advisory Board. We really appreciate all that work, and thank you for giving us 4 amazing candidates. Next item on our agenda for this meeting, item 5, is to acknowledge receipt of various meeting minutes. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Summers and Ms. Spilsbury. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. That motion passes unanimously. Next is current events and conferences attended. As we know, we've been off for a while, so we could spend an hour or 2 talking about this. Yes.
Why don't we just suspend that?
Well, maybe we should, because we really ought to give some thought to it, because there's a lot to talk about. Okay, thank you. So let's continue item 5, and we'll do that at our next meeting before our Monday's meeting. All right. Mr. Brady, do you want to say anything about our next meeting will be Monday, correct? Our study session before the Monday? All right, Mr. Brady agrees with me. So that concludes our agenda for this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Mr. Summers, seconded by Ms. Spilsbury. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned.